Welcome to Washington. I am Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Tonight, a big idea, a golden dome. Now, Trump is now trying to channel Reagan.
Once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles, even if they are launched from other sides of the world, and even if they are launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built.
So here are the two big stories that are coming out of this town at this hour tonight. Reagan had the idea. Trump is now trying to get it built. Why the commander-in-chief says a golden dome is now needed to fight off the new frontier. Hypersonic missiles and space threats. Plus, the big bill. The president was up on Capitol Hill earlier today. He spoke to Republicans, but some Republicans say they are not buying his message. So what comes next? Also tonight, you could call it the margarita moment, how the Secretary of State got into a heated exchange with a senator over a trip to El Salvador.
We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear in the days to come.
Mr. Chairman,
who you went to
Senator, I'm sorry, Mr.
Secretary Rubio has the floor.
Mr. Chairman, he can't make unsubstantiated comments like that.
Secretary Rubio has the floor.
More on that moment later in the show. And is Elon Musk's political push now in reverse? Where he showed up today. I'll explain where he showed up and why he says he's pulling back some of his own money. All that coming up tonight here over the next hour. But first tonight, here from the Hill. Is it a golden idea or is it going too far? The commander-in-chief revealing his new request, $25 billion for a golden dome. Mick Mulvaney tonight on the realities of this happening. But first to our Kelly Meyer, who's live once again over at the White House. Kelly?
Yeah, hey there, Blake. I've been talking with some sources in the defense world, and the big question there tonight is just how this will get funded. Here's the cost breakdown.
The one big, beautiful bill will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome to help construction get underway. That's the initial sort of a down deposit. And we have probably, you're talking about, General, we're talking about $175 billion total cost of this when it's completed.
The president is touting Made in America, saying this will bring jobs from Alaska to Georgia, Florida to Indiana. President Trump says it will take a little bit less than 3 years to complete and will include, quote, super technology that only America has, he says. But he believes he'll have no trouble getting support for the $175 billion completion, $25 billion included in his, quote, big, beautiful bill. That is still waiting to get that support on Capitol Hill. Blake.
Indeed, and we'll get to that later tonight. Kelly Meyer, live from the North Lawn. Kelly, thank you. Joining us now here on the Hill is the congressman from Indiana, Marlin Stutzman. He is a member of the Budget and Financial Services Committee. With us tonight as the president sort of name-checked your state, Indiana, and what it could mean for this potential Golden Dome. Congressman, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
You bet, Blake. Great to be with you. You know, it's exciting. I was actually out at the facility that it's building the satellites for the Golden Dome.
Yeah, so that's L3 Harris, right? L3 Harris is the company that's involved with this $125 million new expansion there. So the president had Senator Jim Banks in the Oval Office today. He's your senator. But what would this mean for Fort Wayne, as you tell me that you were just there at that facility?
Oh, it's huge. You know, it's really a place where we're bringing technology and manufacturing together right there in Fort Wayne. Fort Wayne in Northeast Indiana has a long history of manufacturing, but this is, you know, one of those projects that we can all be very proud of. We're a strong defense state in Indiana, and also the fact that we have manufacturing there. It's a match made in heaven. So it's going to bring a lot of jobs. It's going to bring long-term stability, and it's also a part of our national defense. So Hoosiers are really proud tonight.
What about all of the players, though, who could be involved here? Obviously, I just name-dropped one company in your backyard. There's questions maybe about SpaceX getting a piece of this. Any concerns there?
No. I mean, I think that it's all part of, you know, the American effort to make sure that we keep our country safe. I mean, we know that China is building up their ballistic missile inventory, and the fact that, we're able to build right off of the technology that we have already been manufacturing in Indiana in weather cameras and other satellite operations. So having as many American companies involved with this effort, I think just shows again that President Trump is about making America first and making sure that we keep our country safe, and especially considering China's buildup.
You are a fiscal conservative, I think is one way to put it, right? You're a member of the House Freedom Caucus, for example. One of the reasons why you and a lot of your colleagues are in the news right now. The president talked about this costing $25 billion, Congressman, but the Congressional Budget Office says over 20 years, this would be about $500 billion, $500 billion to set this up. Do we have the money for it?
Well, I think that we have to make the investment in this, considering what China's doing. And, you know, just as you said, I am a fiscal hawk. You know, the guy sitting close to you, Mick, and I served together in Congress, and we were both, you know, very concerned about the direction of our federal budget. But also, we can point to a lot of other things. I can point to a lot of other things in the budget that need to be addressed. Healthcare costs are out of control. That's something we need to focus on. Let's make sure America's safe. Let's make sure our allies are safe. But at the same time, I think that, you know, the president is the deal maker in chief. He's going to make sure that other countries that get the benefit from the Golden Dome will also be participating one way or the other. I hope he does.
So you were in the room with the president today. Obviously, there was that big meeting. He came up to Capitol Hill, 9 o'clock in the morning here in Washington, give or take. First thing, he was up there. There's some questions about whether or not it was effective, whether or not it moved anyone's minds. For example, here was the president afterwards on spending. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
What are you going to tell the fiscal hawks who run the league?
I'm a fiscal hawk.
They don't think this cuts enough spending.
I'm a bigger fiscal hawk. There's nobody like me as a
Thomas
fiscal hawk.
Massey said, do you think that Thomas Massey is correct in saying that this is adding Biden?
No, I don't think Thomas Massey understands government. I think he's a grandstander, frankly. He'll probably vote. We don't even talk to him much. I think he should be voted out of office.
Did he change your mind one way or another? Because, I mean, there was the question there, Biden-level spending. The reality is the president in his first term racked up in the first fiscal year about $800 billion worth of debt, nearly $1 trillion in the second year. And you guys are talking about possibly another $4 trillion or so over the next decade just with this alone.
Well, I mean, you got to remember that the $4 trillion is taking into consideration that it's the promises that have already been made in Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Medicaid is a program that's out of control. We've talked about, you know, what do we do going forward, and also, though, that the fact that the president in this big, beautiful bill and the House Republicans and Senate Republicans are going to cut $1.6 trillion. That's the most this town has ever spent, cut on spending. In fact, I'm just
but there's still a massive hole there, Congressman,
right?
It's still big-time deficit spending.
There is. Absolutely, but I think what you see, there's no consideration for the tariff revenue that President Trump has implemented. There's no consideration for the trillions of dollars of investment that's coming into the United States. A growing economy is going to be what helps fill that gap. Will it fill it entirely? I doubt that it will, but that's where we have to have reforms and spending cuts. And I'm open to doing that. Trying to get the conference together to agree to that is the challenge that Speaker Johnson has.
Okay.
I'm willing to go as far as he would like to go, and I know there's a lot of others, but we got a couple others in this, the SALT caucus that, are really holding their ground on the SALT deduction. That's a big expense.
All right, Marlon Stutzman is a Republican from the state of Indiana in the news today with us live tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
Joining me now, of course. Joining me now, you heard him mention the name, Mick Mulvaney, former budget director, former Trump White House chief of staff, NewsNation contributor. You dealt with defense spending, of course, in your time. This is a concept, right? Yeah. Ronald Reagan had first talked about this in the 80s. Pete Hegseth basically said today, look, we essentially didn't have the technology there in the 80s. Roll that soundbite real quick.
Our adversaries have been quickly modernizing their nuclear forces, building out ballistic missiles capable of hosting multiple warheads, building out hypersonic missiles capable of attacking the United States within an hour, building submarines that can sneak up on our shores, and worse yet, building space weapons. It is time that we change that equation and start doubling down on the protection of the homeland.
That was actually the General Mick who's in charge of possibly overseeing whatever this could be. I thought that was pretty revealing. talking about all the threats that are out there. Why is the president trying to do this?
It's real. By the way, I'm a little concerned. I guess I'm okay with California not being covered here. I'm a little concerned about southern Florida.
I think it'll be fine. I think
you and
it'll
I,
be fine.
both from the 305. Look, the threats are evolving. There's no question. And you asked a really good question to Marlon Stutzman just a second ago.
Which is?
Can we afford this? And I think that the right answer is, look, if we spend the money on this, maybe we don't have to spend the money on other things. This is if it works, and I think the technology does exist, it's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to take longer than 3 years. But if it works, it gives you the flexibility to do so much more for so much less in other places. There's so much else you don't have to do if you know that you are thoroughly protected against this type of threat.
So the current defense system is essentially something like this. We have sensors, radars for early warning and tracking. You've got the THAAD system, the ground-based interceptors, the Patriot system. We're not going to say that this stuff doesn't work, right? Because that would be it
does work.
It does work.
It does work.
One, it works, and two, we're not going to say, it needs an upgrade or whatever. But I guess the question then is, this Iron Dome concept, how much better is that than this?
It's this writ large. Okay, we do have missile defense systems. In fact, we put them in the budget in 2017, 18, 19. When I was the budget director, we added to those systems. They're mostly in Alaska and in California. So we have some missile defense systems. What Trump is talking about doing is taking it and making it sort of nationwide. Really hard to do technologically, not impossible. Really expensive to do. So you have to sort of look at it and say, is the cost benefit analysis here? And I think maybe if they look at it close enough, it might be.
So there was a headline that I saw, 5-6 days ago.
Okay.
It was in the South China Morning Post. I want to show that real quick. And here was the headline, Mick. It said, China reveals tech breakthrough behind Pakistan's hypersonic strike on India. Chinese missiles were used by Pakistan to destroy an Indian air defense system in what is believed to be its first combat use. It was described as a new dawn of warfare. And we heard in the Oval Office today the need to set this up because of hypersonic missiles. And China was bragging about this just a few days ago.
Yeah, this is the new frontier. It used to be that nuclear missiles would go out into space and we pretty much knew where they were going. This, in layman's terms, is essentially a steerable nuclear missile, which is much, much more difficult to shoot down. We're developing the technology, the Russians are, and clearly the Chinese are as well. But this is the new frontier. The question is going to be, does the technology that we have now, can we adapt that technology, which was designed to get sort of old-fashioned ballistic missiles? Can we use those against hypersonics? Great question.
All right, we'll leave it there. Mick Mulvaney, see you later in the show. Thank you, sir. Still to come tonight. Here on the Hill, it was a big day in Washington. Live look at the Capitol, the president up on the Hill, as you heard me talking with the congressman there, trying to convince Republicans to pass that quote-unquote big, beautiful bill. The status of that on the other side of the break, plus the fallout from this, involving a New Jersey lawmaker outside a detention center in New Jersey. Coming up here on the Hill, why the Department of Justice is stepping in, and one witness today joins me live. And Elon Musk, is he about to walk away from Washington? He showed up at a place today, not once but twice, and I thought to myself, this might say something. Welcome to Washington. This is the center of politics. I'm Blake Berman. You're watching The Hill. We're coming right back in 4 minutes.
Don't touch the bag.
Well, that was the president after meeting with Republicans earlier today up on Capitol Hill, where he tried to push Republicans to support his quote-unquote big, beautiful bill. The fate of that bill, though, hangs in the balance as the spending package continues to face a few key hurdles, not from Democrats, but from Republicans. Our Michael Schnell, congressional reporter from The Hill, joins us live. Hello, Michael. You are busy up there on the Hill. You had a presidential visit today, and what's fascinating about this is Donald Trump, we talk about how he has such control over the Republican Party, right? But he went in there and he talked to Republicans, and they came out and they seemed underwhelmed.
Yeah, Blake, that's exactly right. President Trump was brought into the closed-door House Republican conference meeting this morning, sort of as the closer. Speaker Mike Johnson wanted him to coalesce the conference around this big, beautiful bill, get all those holdouts on board, and get this cleared in the House by the end of the week. But I spoke to a number of Republicans across the conference after that meeting, hardline Republicans and moderates, who both said that they were just not yet on board. It's the two key remaining remaining hang-ups that we've been talking about for a while now. Among hardline conservatives, they're still pushing for changes to Medicaid. Moderate Republicans, meanwhile, they want a higher SALT deduction cap, that state and local tax deduction. Now, Speaker Mike Johnson is still pressing ahead with his plan of holding a vote on this bill on Thursday that would be in check with his goal of getting this passed by Memorial Day. But there are still those key questions, and if those two hang-ups are not resolved, this just will not pass. Now, we did hear from President Trump and Speaker Johnson after that huddle this morning. Listen to what they had to say.
I think we have unbelievable unity. I think we're going to get everything we want, and I think we're going to have a great victory, and this man has done a great job. And I think this was a tremendous session. You may want to say something.
Yeah, it was a great meeting. The party is unified. The House Republican Conference is excited. Multiple standing ovations. They love this president. The people back home love what he's doing. It's historic.
Now, Blake, that is optimism from those two top Republican leaders. But I'll tell you, I spoke to Congressman Andy Harris. He's the chairman of the Conservative House Freedom Caucus just a few minutes ago. He told me there's been progress, but he's not yet at a place where he can support this bill. Blake?
All right, our Michael Schnell up on the Hill tonight. Michael, thank you. With me now, NewsNation political contributor, Republican strategist Denise Gitsham, and NewsNation contributor out there in cyberspace, but we feel his presence, Chris Cillizza. Hello to you both. Denise, let me start with you. So the simplest way to explain this is kind of how Michael broke it down. You got three buckets.
Yeah.
You've got SALT, that's state and local taxes, and how much you can write off.
I understand it as a Californian.
You know it as a Californian. You've got Medicaid, and what Republicans are going to do there, and the deficit, how much they are willing to add to the deficit. And if you take from one, you got to put into the other and vice versa, right? And that's kind of the challenge.
Isn't that the fundamental problem we always have when we're dealing with bills? I mean, this is no different than every other process that we've gone to strike a compromise that can help move our country in a certain direction, right? And honestly, the Medicaid thing doesn't seem as big a deal to congressional Republicans as the deficit and the SALT group. But what I heard, what I feel like with the House Freedom Caucus in particular, especially with what Andy Harris said at the end, as reported by Michael, is that no means maybe and maybe means yes. Because anytime President Trump brings that hammer down, they are not forgotten about Bob Good.
They are going to get the yes, though.
Oh, they're going to get to yes, because remember, Bob Good was the chair of the House Freedom Caucus. Nobody's forgotten about that, right?
Hey, Cillizza, the dynamic here, though, I can't imagine that Republicans in one form or another don't get to yes on something, because means tax increases, right? And that's just off the table. But the dynamic here today, I think, was sort of interesting that the reporting is Trump went into the room, he tried to rally them and came out, and some Republicans were like, well, we still have some questions.
I mean, I think no Republican worth his or her salt wants to say, okay, well, I had principled objections before I went into the meeting with Donald Trump, but then he said I should get behind it, and now my principled objections are all gone, right? Like, no one wants to capitulate immediately. I would look at this Rules Committee meeting, which is a nerdy thing, but will set the rules of the debate. It is starting at 1 a.m. This is a scheduling issue, 1 a.m. tomorrow morning. If they get it through rules, then the next thing, which I think they will, the next thing will be, do they actually schedule a vote on Thursday? Because I'm very skeptical that Mike Johnson schedules a vote if he does not believe they either have a number or they're like within one and they think they can lean on him. So I think the Trump impact is to be determined. But to Denise's point, over and over and over again in this last decade, what we have seen is people in the Republican Party specifically who oppose Donald Trump publicly usually pay the political price. Now there is an exception to every rule. Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, publicly disagreed with Donald Trump at the 2020 election in his state. He won. But Jeff Flake, Liz Cheney, Adam Kinzinger, I mean, you can just go down the list. Yeah, Mitt Romney. I mean, there's, these people who stood against him, and he won. And trust me, House Republicans are mindful of that. They are all looking around. They don't want to become the next Bob Good who loses in a primary because he tried to take a stand against Donald Trump. So I think they get to yes. I think it's more of a question of when, not if.
Got to leave it there. Denise Gitsham, see you later in the show. Chris Cillizza, thanks for popping on tonight. Appreciate you both. Talk again soon, Chris. All right, still much more ahead tonight here on The Hill. The Trump White House defending its border crackdown.
That woman was out of control. She was shoving federal agents. She was out of control. The days of that crap are over.
The president talking about that scuffle outside an ICE detention center. Are charges against the Democratic lawmaker the right move? There was a hearing today up on Capitol Hill. One of the witnesses joins us on the other side. And is Elon Musk hanging up that Doge chainsaw? He was asked today about his future, and where he was asked about it, I think says it all. We're back in a few.
In the case of El Salvador, absolutely. Absolutely. We deported gang members, including the one you had a margarita with. And that guy is a human trafficker, and that guy is a gangbanger, and the evidence is going to be clear in the days to come.
Mr. Chairman,
who you went to
Senator,
I'm sorry,
please,
Mr. Chairman.
Secretary Rubio has the floor.
Secretary Rubio should take that testimony to the federal court of the United States because he hasn't done it under oath.
To put it one way, got a little heated up on Capitol Hill today. That, of course, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the Democratic Senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, as they were talking about the deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to El Salvador. Senator Van Hollen traveled to that country last month to meet with Abrego Garcia, and he's been trying to get him returned back to the United States. And tonight, the fallout over immigration and deportation policies continues. The Department of Justice now charging the Democratic Congresswoman from New Jersey, LaMonica McIver, with assaulting law enforcement outside of an immigration detention facility in Newark. The Congresswoman was a part of a group of lawmakers who got into a confrontation with federal law enforcement. You see some of the video there at the gates of the facility, leading to a standoff. The Congresswoman is calling the charges, quote, political intimidation. My next guest, Charles Marino, former Homeland Security advisor. He was on the Hill today testifying at a hearing titled Examining the Threats to ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. He's, of course, the author of the book Terrorists on the Border and in Our Country. Charles, hello. Nice to see you in person. When I saw Charles, I was like, it's good to know you actually exist and there's not an AI version of you out there when we talk to you every day.
That's right.
So you were up on the Hill for this for this hearing about this incident in New Jersey. Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, look, there's a way to go about congressional oversight, and this was not it. This was an ambush that was carried out by the mayor of Newark and the Congresswoman. And she is now being held accountable by being charged federally for assaulting federal agents in the process. The theme of the hearing was the influence of politics and how it is endangering not just ICE, because let's keep in mind, there are federal law enforcement agencies throughout government participating and working alongside ICE. So it's endangering these agents in the process of their daily jobs.
Why do you use the word ambush? That seems fairly strong, and some might take issue with that.
Well, I can tell you, in almost 30 years in the government, I can tell you the way congressional oversight is usually carried out, and that is working in close coordination with the congressional affairs offices of the agencies that you want to work with. That was not done here. This was a congresswoman and a mayor showing up alongside protesters simultaneously and attempting to breach the outer perimeter of this detention center, a detention center that's housing very dangerous illegal immigrants in the country, committing additional crimes against Americans.
So she said today, quote, at the end of the day, the reason we were there is to make sure the facility was up to par, clean and safe, and the detainees were given due process. Any issue with that?
Yeah, a lot of issue, because I don't think that was their priority to check on the condition of the detention center and the treatment of those.
They were there to get the cameras?
Absolutely.
And all that? Okay.
This was a political ambush. And I can tell you that also there's just ways to go about conducting your business. And I think you saw some agreement during my testimony today about that.
So one of the things that you found most interesting today, you told me, was, again, Charles Marino, who was a witness at this hearing just a little while ago up on the Hill, was this moment from one of the top Democrats. I want to play it, and we'll talk about it other side.
I will say that the Republicans were right. Democrats lost on immigration. When you look at all the polling, when you talk to people, they lost on immigration.
That, of course, is Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Why did that stand out to you? Of all the things when you were up there and getting questions and giving answers, why was that the moment?
Yeah, I'll tell you, because we're starting to see a recognition by Democrats that this issue cost them the election. What's still troubling is that Republicans point to this immigration crisis and what it does to our national security, and that the Biden administration was really the anomaly when it abandoned enforcing the federal immigration laws and open borders. And what I can tell you is the Democrats are focused on this solely from a political standpoint. They are still not acknowledging the very dangerous criminal and national security threats that were allowed to come into the country.
But
we're halfway there.
Trump's numbers on immigration, though, are coming down. So I guess there's the question if he's going about it the wrong way as well.
Well, look, he's using existing laws on the books. He's engaging diplomatically with countries along the path of migration. We see that with Mexico, Canada, and others down in the Northern Triangle. We are giving some rewards to countries who are becoming part of the solution as opposed to being part of the problem, which they were the previous 4 years. And we're seeing strong domestic measures. Okay. Look, he got elected on this issue. He's the head of the executive branch. The executive branch enforces the laws of this country, and that's exactly what the Trump administration is doing.
Do we have another soundbite from Marco Rubio earlier today, Mark? We don't, but we played it off the top. Marco Rubio and Chris Van Hollen going at it back and forth. What do you think? What was behind that? It seemed to me like Rubio got out of it what Rubio wanted to get out of it, and Van Hollen got out of it what Van Hollen wanted to get out of it. From your perch, as someone who testified in a different hearing today, but sort of on a similar topic, what's from your lens, what do you make of that moment?
I think Rubio got more out of it. Out of that exchange, because he was able to highlight the very dangerous people that have made their way into the country. And then he was able to point out to the congressman, is this the hill that Democrats want to die on by defending these very dangerous people that already violated the immigration laws of this country and are continuing to violate the law and kill and harm American citizens? So I think he came out of it with the advantage.
You think Van Hollen got what he wanted out of it?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't.
Really?
Yeah. I haven't seen him go back to El Salvador.
Okay. We'll leave it there. Charles Marino, live in person. Nice to have you on as always.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it. All right, still to come. Here on the Hill, Elon Musk. Is he about to put D.C. in the rear view mirror?
Do you see yourself, and are you committed to still being the chief executive of Tesla in 5 years' time?
Yes.
To the point there, but he was also asked today a lot about his political future, and not only what he said, but where he said it could point to what comes next. The full panel, other side of the break.
Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
Bill, what am I saying that you don't like?
Everything.
America's favorite sparring duo with TV's liveliest, most honest debate.
You were right in your analysis.
Tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on NewsNation.
Oh, they can drive, they can park, they can even make U-turns all by themselves. But how long does it take the company's CEO to make a 180-degree turn himself? It seems like that is what Elon Musk at least signaled today. After spending over $250 million to try to help Donald Trump in 2024, Musk said during an interview conducted by Bloomberg that in the future he will pull back on his spending on politics.
I think in terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough. Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
And after that interview at the Qatar Economic Forum, Musk then spoke to CNBC from Tesla headquarters in Austin. Musk said he does not have regrets for getting involved with government service and was asked if his Doge efforts were worth it. Musk said at that point that this was the one thing, or at least one thing, that he learned.
Legacy media propaganda
is very effective at making people believe things that aren't true.
What would an example of that be?
That I'm a Nazi, for example.
Now, his comments come as a new poll as well shows that his companies are taking a reputational hit. Even SpaceX, keep that in mind for a second, even SpaceX, which is now able to launch a Statue of Liberty-sized rocket all the way up into space and then bring it right back down to the very same spot. The same company that just rescued 2 stranded astronauts from the International Space Station. They've taken a nosedive in a poll which scores company reputations. Full panel here with me now. Mick Mulvaney, back once again, NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House chief of staff. Nicole Brenner-Schmitz is a Democratic strategist. Lindsey Granger, NewsNation contributor. And Denise Gitsom, NewsNation contributor as well. Hello to you all. Thanks for being in. Hello. Nice to have you.
Hello, Berman.
Hello. I don't think it was coincidental that Elon Musk showed up today first at an event being interviewed by Bloomberg, and then shortly after that, Mick, at Tesla headquarters being interviewed by CNBC. I think this was a very clear signal to the business world, basically saying, I'm back.
I'm getting back to business.
Yep.
I'm getting out of politics a little bit. Keep in mind, there's enough open-endedness in those comments about I'm going to pull back on government until I feel like I'm not going to pull back anymore. So, I mean, it's fine. But look, the guy spends half as much money. That's still going to be $125 million, which makes him a player.
You think he'd go there?
Sure. Why not? I mean, the guy's worth, what, a couple $100 billion? What's an extra billion on campaign?
So what's his future then? Because
whatever he wants it to be.
In government.
Whatever he wants it to be. He could be a Democrat, he could be a Republican, he could be an independent.
What do you mean he could be a Democrat?
Why not? I mean,
Trump was.
That's a great point. I mean, the party's not what they used to be. Folks change all the time in this.
Yeah.
Is that what he signaled today, showing up on these business networks?
Well, of course. I mean, Tesla stock tanked, it's gone up $100 in the last month since the anticipation of him coming. He's a great businessman. Nobody begrudges a bad CEO who makes them money. They only begrudge people that they like to throw things at, when they're angry at what he does emotionally. So here's the thing about all these Silicon Valley people. I'm from California. I represent a lot of Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. And when you're a visionary who has the money to make things happen, you don't realize that coming to Washington requires a totally different skill set, which is making friends, and also a much longer sort of timeline. You have to have patience, which people like him don't need patience. They just need a lot of money and a bunch of minions who can do whatever they say. It's a very different environment, and I've seen every single Silicon Valley person that I've brought to Washington suffer sort of the same disillusionment with politics.
I mean, he came in as this powerful, one of the most powerful outsiders ever, and left as one of the most diminished businessmen to leave Washington. I think that he would probably steer clear far away from politics because his unfavorability rating, according to Reuters, is 58%. And so that's most of the people that are going to spend the same American dollars on your Tesla and all your things that you're selling to them and don't like you now because you stepped so deeply into politics. And I think that he was way outside of his wheelhouse, thinking about people like veterans who voted for Trump that I've interviewed that said, hey, I lost my job. I was a veteran and then I went to work for the government and then you fired me because this was your idea with Doge. You said you were cutting billions. No one sees the reapings of that. And so people are just confused about what Doge actually did besides slash and burn.
I don't think Elon is done here in Washington just yet, right? But it was he signaled his intentions, or at least he has been.
He did. And look, I think he came here and accomplished a lot of what he wanted done, which is to make it seem like all this innovation, but it's really deregulation. What he's trying to do is put his profits over the people. He's trying to make it look like an innovation. The FAA is a perfect example. He's blowing it up. Why? So SpaceX can go forward without the same regulations.
That's the reason why
and put the public safety and jeopardy for his profits. Absolutely. Will he spend again? He said maybe. Why would he spend again? Because if something prevents him from being able to run these cars, he's going to buy that off. This is the biggest problem we have, corruption and money in politics.
Here's the thing. Why would anyone of his stature ever do this again? Whether you hate Elon or whether you love Elon or you're someone in between. If you're looking at this as a case study, why would you ever do this again?
It's easy, because they don't understand this town. They think that this town works like Wall Street or Silicon Valley, and it doesn't. This town has its own language, its own rhythm, its own culture. They think it's easy here, and it's not.
But you don't think they'll see Musk and say, wait a minute, I'm not...
Oh, no,
well, I think
I could do it, yeah.
What people want more than money in business is power, proximity to power. People want to be close to President Trump. You see how many people schmoozed him, that hated him, went on tirades against him.
In fairness, people have been schmoozing presidents for a long long. I've seen it.
Now we got the lobbyist.
The Clooney thing with Biden. So, I mean, that's not unique to Republicans. It's certainly not unique to Elon Musk.
All right. So one of the things that Musk said today in that interview was basically the fate of self-driving and autonomous vehicles. If you go back more than a century, Washington was worried about moving from the old horse and buggy to that thing called the vehicle, right? And so here's what Musk said today. I want to talk about it on the other side.
My prediction is that probably by the end of next year, we'll have probably hundreds of thousands, if not
hundreds of thousands,
if not over 1 million Teslas doing self-driving in the U.S.
This is your state.
Yeah,
you see Waymo
California?
out there everywhere.
But it terrifies me.
At this point, is the government going to allow it, given where he's been over the last 5 months or so, or last year, say?
I'm going to be, you mean federally?
Yeah, I wonder what the pushback is going to be, given that it's him and his company.
It depends on who's in charge and how good their lobbyists are. I'm just going to give you the straight up Beltway answer. It's just a reality. I was one of Elon's first 4 lobbyists in 2008. And so because of my work with my law firm, we got the federal tax credit that enabled this Model S to come into fruition. And so I understand the power of money and special interests, as you were talking about. And if he knows if he learned anything from his time here, hopefully he learned how to play Washington better.
So I can gather you're not a fan, but if this is the future and he says, look, this is where we're going, he was with Sean Duffy earlier today, what about the concept of, okay, this is where things are going and the government should play ball with it?
I think we have to make sure that it's being done safely, though. We have to keep the public safety in mind with this. We have to keep jobs in mind. I mean, these are the crucial aspects of having these self-driving cars, right? You just have to go talk to
California.
Talk to the teachers union about it, right?
Let's make a note of this.
I'm going to save the congressman for the end, or former congressman for the end, but I'll give you
I think that he's been trying to put this car out, this automated car, since 2016. I was in Arizona when they were testing the Waymo car there, and they beat him to the punchline. And so I don't think it's going to be a problem of Congress. I think it's going to be a problem actually following through with the plan of getting this car out. That's what I think is the bigger issue.
Let's have the same conversation 5-6 years from now after he gives $200 million to the next Democrat.
Right, exactly.
But I guess that's the bigger point, right, of all of this is, again, to my question, who does this next, given what we've witnessed here over the last year or so?
There'll be no shortage of people who think they understand Washington who don't understand Washington. If I had a dime for every Wall Street magnate who came in and left this town with his tail between his legs, we could pay off the national debt.
The article that you wrote a year ago or 6 months ago
that Elon Musk would find it was easier to get to Mars than it was to fix the federal government.
It was a great article, Mick. And you were dead on.
Every now and then I'm right. It doesn't happen nearly enough.
Often.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Berman.
All right, still to come tonight here on The Hill. Why a small town in Texas is making some pretty big headlines. I'm going to explain. My take is next on the other side of the break. And coming up on Elizabeth Vargas Reports, she will talk to an author who says the CIA is deliberately slow-walking the release of the remaining JFK files and is holding back key documents. That's coming up about 8 minutes away right here on News Nation. Other side, though, my take. End the show here. Princeton University. It is the #1 school in the country, according to U.S. News and World Report. But it's not the prestigious Ivy League campus in central New Jersey I want to spotlight tonight. Rather, it's another Princeton. Princeton, Texas. That's because the U.S. Census Bureau just announced that the fastest growing city in this great country is none other than Princeton, Texas. Now, last year, the population of the mostly rural town, it's about an hour northeast or so of Dallas, it grew by about 30%. Princeton, Texas is about 10 square miles, but saw a population gain from roughly 28,000 to 37,000 in just a year. The downside, though, you might have guessed it, as one local report put it, traffic has picked up just a bit in Princeton. Now, the graduates of Princeton University will have their big day next week, by the way, as they move on to bigger and better and on into the real world. But also a congratulations tonight to the 37,000 residents of Princeton, Texas, who are clearly onto something special in their own right. And that's my take tonight. By the way, on that list of fastest growing cities in this country, I want to point out another one with some pretty big growth. And it gives us a chance once again to say hello from our Hill here in Washington to yours. So hello to the folks down in Sugar Hill, Georgia, which, by the way, experienced growth of about 10% last year of their own, putting them on the fastest growing cities list as well. Perhaps coincidentally here, I don't know, but maybe Princeton, just like Princeton, Texas, Sugar Hill is also about an hour to the northeast of their biggest city, in this case, Atlanta. Incorporated in 1939, its namesake reportedly comes from a local story about a wagon spilling sugar as it was descending a hill in the area. Sugar Hill, Georgia, by the way, represented by the Congressman Andrew Clyde. He is a former Navy commander who served in Congress since 2021, a Republican. So to the folks in Sugar Hill who are watching us here on NewsNation or listening to us on SiriusXM, a big hello from our hill to yours. There were two big stories in this town tonight that we started off the show with. The first one, the president today floating the concept of an Iron Dome. That was the image, a couple of the still images in the White House today. Not really an unusual concept, given Ronald Reagan talked about this back in the 80s. The tech obviously wasn't there then. The president says he wants $1 billion for it now. And that was one of the big stories coming out of the Oval Office. Also, a live look up on Capitol Hill. They are going to be working at 1 a.m. this morning, some members of Congress, to vote on the president's quote-unquote big, beautiful bill. The president was up there today on the Hill, trying to convince Republicans to move the process forward. Where it all goes from here, you can count on us to cover it. We thank you so much for watching. We'll be back here tomorrow. I'm Blake Berman.